This week's parsha, Parshas Behaaloscha, we learn the parsha of man, which actually appears twice in Torah's Moshe, in Chumash Shemos, in Parshas Beshalach, and once again in Parshas Behaaloscha, at great length. Uberedes hatala lamachan elaylo yered hamon olav. And as we know, some of the halachas, Hilchas Shabbos, Suda Shabbos, are zeichel aman. Lechem Mishneh. The reason we need and we eat Lechem Mishneh is zeichel aman. Man did not descend from the heavens on Shabbos, and therefore Erev Shabbos there was Lechem Mishneh. And lezeicha haman, we eat Lechem Mishneh on Shabbos. Another minig which originates with a man is Poires Mape Mekadesh. B'shas Kiddush we need to cover the chalas. One of the reasons is Zeichel Aman, Uberedes Atal, Yered Haman Olav, and Chazal teach us that there was a blanket of tal under the man that fell before the man, and the man was covered with tal, and that is the reason we cover the chalas by Suda Shabbos. Regarding the mitzvah of Lechem Mishneh, there's a machlokes the Magen Avraham and the Taz, whether it's a mitzvah d'oraisa or a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. It is interesting and noteworthy that nor the Magen Avraham nor the Taz don't appear in Hilchas Shabbos, but actually in Hilchas Chanukah and elsewhere. The Taz, Siman Tov Reish Ayin Ches, when we're dealing with the Halacha Ner Chanukah and Kiddush Hayam, which has precedence, which comes before the other, Ner Chanukah or Kiddush. The Taz says the question is only if a person has chalas, but he wants to be mekadosh al yayin, which of the two have precedence. But if he doesn't have chalas, well, Pas and Shabbos definitely becomes before Ner Chanukah, because that is a mitzvah d'oraisa, which is Lechem Mishneh. That is the Taz in Hilchas Chanukah Tuf Reish Ayin Ches. The Magen Avraham in Tuf Reish Yud Ches, which is Hilchas Yom Kippur, makes it very clear that Lechem Mishneh is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, and it is only an asmachta and a zeichel aman, but not a mitzvah d'oraisa. The Chsam Sofer Tshuvas Archaim Siman Vav brings in the name of Minchas Yankov, one of the great Achronim, somewhat of a compromise, and he says, Menatayra, you need 1.5 kikros. The Lashon of the Gemara Shabbos Kuf Yud Zayin Amid Beis, Chayev Odom Levtzoya B'Shabbos Al Shnei Kikros, Keneged Lechem Mishneh. The Chsam Sofer quotes the Minchas Yankov, if you have one shleim and another half, Menatayra, that is sufficient. Why? Why would 1.5 be sufficient? An interesting argument. Interesting Mishasheya. Because the Gemara in the beginning of Masechet Brochas, as probably all of you remember, the Gemara deals with the question, how many mishmeros are there in a night? How is the night divided? How many mishmeros? And the Gemara says, Kiven de Ovar, mishmer of a palge, shtei mishmeros korela. If you passed 1.5 mishmeros, it is defined as if 2. So the Minchas Yankov argues, if we need Lechem Mishneh, Menatayra 1.5 would be. The reasoning and the rationale is, Lechem Mishneh the Baiman. So Baiman it wasn't 1.5. Baiman it was 2. It was a double portion. It was Lechem Mishneh Mamish. And if the reason we need Lechem Mishneh is Dumi Daman, whether it's Menatayra or the Rabbanan. Dumi Daman means Dumi Daman. And Baiman there were Lechem Mishneh. So the Minchas Yankov quoted by the Chsam Sofer is an interesting opinion. But basically, as I quoted, the machlokes Magen Avraham and Taz, whether Lechem Mishneh is a mitzvah d'oraisa or a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, nevertheless, it definitely is one of the basic and important halachas in Suda Shabbos. And one of the big questions is, how do we define the mitzvah of Lechem Mishneh? Interesting, Rashi, in the source of the Sugya, in Shabbos Kuf Yud Zayin, Chayav Odom Levtzoya Al Shtei Kikros, because by the man we learn Lechem Mishneh. Rashi writes, Chayav Odom Levtzoya Berchas HaMoitzi. Berchas HaMoitzi. So many understand Rashi that actually the mitzvah of Lechem Mishneh is to say Berchas HaMoitzi on Lechem Mishneh. That is the way we define the mitzvah of Lechem Mishneh. According to Rashi, why is the Lashon of Chazal, the Lashon of the Gemara, Chayav Udam Livtzoya al Shtei Kikros? we all know what B'tzias HaPas means. B'tzias HaPas means B'tzias HaPas, cutting the pas. The B'tzia of the pas. But Rashi nevertheless says, Chayavudam Lefsoya, Berchas HaMoitzi. Which brings us to a very interesting question. Many Hasidim, the meaning by many Hasidim is, generally Hasidim are always makpid to make their own Berchas HaNehenin. Hasidim aren't Yotze Berchas HaNehenin with others. And that is regarding B'tzias HaPas and also regarding Kiddush. So, usually the meaning of Hasidim is either each and every member of the family makes Kiddush on his own, even if he doesn't make Kiddush on his own, and is Yotze with the Kiddush of the Rosh HaMishpocha, but when he drinks wine, when he partakes of the wine, everybody says Berchas Hayayin. And that is an interesting question, which the Briskerov asked his father, Reb Chaim, and as the story goes in Brisk, the Briskerov saw in Shul that the Rav makes Kiddush sometimes, even though in the Litter they didn't have this minig of Keddashim as they had by the Hasidim, but it did happen that either the father, Reb Chaim in his home, made Kiddush, and some of the participants, some of the family members or the guests, made their own Berchas Hayayin. So if it's Leil Shabbos Kodesh, that shouldn't be a problem, because the Iker Kiddush Leil Shabbos Kodesh is the Broch of Mekadesh Shabbos. And with that Brocha, the Rosh HaMishpocha is Moitzi all the others. But Kiddush Rabbah, Kiddush Shabbos in the morning, what is Kiddush Shabbos in the morning besides Berchas HaNehenin? Kiddush Rabbah is only the Brocha of Boire Priya Geffen. So of the other members of the community or family or guests, I want to be Yotze Kiddush with a father because they don't have a kais, each and every one of them. And when they drink the wine, they once again make Berchas HaGofen. So they weren't Yotze with his Berchas HaGofen. So where's their Kiddush? How would they Yotze Kiddush? When they drink, they don't have a kais. It's not a kais molei. And they weren't Yotze with his Berchas HaGefen, because if you're Yotze with his Brocha, how could you say a Brocha once again? That would be a Brocha Levatolo. And the same question arises regarding B'tzias HaPas and Lechem Mishneh. If the father is the one that has Lechem Mishneh, and he breaks the bread, and he gives a piece of challah to the children and other members sitting around the table, and they make a Berchas HaMoitzi, then they weren't Yotze with his Berchas HaMoitzi. And when they make a Berchas HaMoitzi, they don't have Lechem Mishneh. So how would we explain Minig Hasidim according to the simplicity of Rashi, when Rashi says, Chayav Odom Levitzoya, Berchas HaMoitzi. If it's Berchas HaMoitzi, how is he Moitzi the others if they say the Brocha once again? So Rashi does say, Chayav Odom Levitzoya, Berchas HaMoitzi. Shulchan Aruch Harav Simarei Shayin Dalet Siv Dalet Chayodom Klal Zayin Siv Beis in Hilchas Shabbos Kaf HaChaim and many others say according to Rashi, if you're Yotze, you don't have Lechem Mishneh before you, and you're Yotze with the Lechem Mishneh of the Mishpocha, of the Rosh HaMishpocha, of the senior member of the family, you're Yotze with him, then you cannot say Berchas HaMoitzi, because if you say Berchas HaMoitzi, you weren't Yotze Lechem Mishneh. So the Eshel Avram, B'Chacharov, in Simarei Shayin Dalet, coming to be Miyashav Minig Chasidim to explain their Minig, he says, no, Lechem Mishneh is B'tzias HaPas. That is the Lashon of the Gemara, Chayav Odom Levtzoya. And if the mitzvah is B'tzia, then Shlichu Shel Odom Kamoisoi. And the person that does B'tzias HaPas is a Shliach of all the others. Which is a questionable argument. First of all, it goes against Rashi. Rashi says, Chayav Odom Levtzoya Berchas HaMoitzi. He does have an argument, so why is the Lashon of the Gemara Chayav Odom Levtzoya al Shtei Kikris, and why doesn't Rashi say Chayav Odom Levorech al Shtei Kikris? Arguing that this is a concept of Shlichus is also a bit strange. If it is Shlichus, then you need Minui. The members aren't aware that he is their Shliach. They didn't delegate authority. They didn't ask him to do B'tzias HaPas for them. So this wouldn't be Shlichus. So Rav Waldman says, Zochen liyodem shaloi b'fonov. Interesting. Do we find the concept of Zochen liyodem shaloi b'fonov b'mitzvahs? Shaloi b'fonav means without him asking you should do so. Doesn't make a difference whether it is in his presence or not. So by Zachan Yodem Shaloi b'fonav, we do not need the consent and the intention of the Shaleach, but at least we need the consent and the intention of the Shaleach. And it never occurred to us that when a person is Britzeya, he needs to be Machaven to be Zoicha for all the others. For many reasons, Zachan Yodem Shaloi b'fonav is not relevant here in our case, and I think neither is Shlichus. So this interpretation is a far-fetched interpretation, which brings us back to the basic question. So Hara Chasidim Yoitze Lechem Mishneh. In my opinion, we need to reconcile the Lashon of the Gemara Chayavodim Livtzoya al Shtei Kikrois and Lashon Rashi Berchas HaMoitzi. And therefore, I think that the basic gather of Lechem Mishneh is a person has to be Koiveya Su'uda and Lechem Mishneh. And that is the Lashon Chayavodim Livtzoya Shtei Kikrois. And when Rashi says Berchas HaMoitzi, he doesn't actually mean the brocha. He cannot mean the brocha. Because according to the Taz, if Lechem Mishneh is the Uraisa, Berchas HaNe'enin is only the Rabbanon. So how could we define Lechem Mishneh as Berchas HaMoitzi if Lechem Mishneh is the Uraisa, and Berchas HaMoitzi is only Midrabanan? So how could we define the mitzvah of Lechem Mishneh as Berchas HaMoitzi? And therefore my understanding in Rashi would be, we could mistakenly explain and understand Chayav Odam Levtzoy al Shtei Kikrois. It could be at the end of the Suda. You know, after you're through with the Suda, at the end of the Suda, you could bring Shtei Kikrois, Bibitzei and the Kikrois, and Nira Kazayas, or even less. Would a person be Yoitzi the mitzvah of Lechem Mishneh? No. Because my understanding is the mitzvah of Lechem Mishneh is to be Koiveya Su'uda al Lechem Mishneh. And that is what Rashi means, Berchas HaMoitzi, meaning you need to start your Suda, and Berchas HaMoitzi has to be on Lechem Mishneh. Because the basic idea of Chavodim Levtzoya is not the brocha in itself. At least according to the Taz, it cannot be the brocha into itself, because the brocha is the Rabbanon, and Lechem Mishneh is Min HaTorah. Rashi means to say that the shtei kickers are the shtei kickers on which you make Berchas HaMoitzi Tchilas HaSuda, because the gather of Lechem Mishneh is Tzorach Lekvoya Suda Lechem Mishneh, and that reconciles the Lashon of Rashi with the Lashon of the Gemara Chayav Odom Livtzoya. Livtzoya meaning Tchilas HaSuda. When you make Berchas HaMoitzi and you begin your Suda, you need to be Mitzoya Shtei Kikrois. That is the gather of Mitzvahs Lechem Mishneh, and therefore, in my understanding, each of the members, if the father, he is the Rosh HaMishpocha, he was Batseyan Shtei Tikras, if you partake from his challah, you are Koiveya Suda and Lechem Mishneh. Because those Shtei Kikros don't cease to be Lechem Mishneh after the Bitziyah. Those are the Lechem Mishneh upon which are all our Koiveya Suda. So if everything depends on the bracha, that is a problem. Because when each of the family members says the bracha, it is no longer Lechem Mishneh, but it is not actually your personal bracha, it is Kviyas HaSuda. And all our Kviyas Suda on those Lechem Mishneh upon which the father made his bracha. So it doesn't matter the fact that you're making your bracha as well. The point isn't the bracha, the point is Tchilas HaSuda and Kviyas Suda should be on Lechem Mishneh. That is my understanding. And therefore, those that actually make the bracha on Lechem Mishneh, Vadai, that is the proper minig, but Chasidim, that each and every member of the family makes his own Berchas HaMoitzi, are still Mekayim the mitzvah of Chayav Levtzoy al Shtei Kikros, because their Kviyas Suda is on Lechem Mishneh. So the basic... Yeah, that goes back many years, and it is interesting because basically Hasidim are Ashkenazim. Today it's not exclusive. Nothing is exclusive today. But and Ashkenazim are Noye Kishitas Ramo, and the Ramo makes it very clear that the Balabai is Boitzeya and he is Moitzi all the others. The same rule applying to Kiddush. But Hasidim were always makbid, and this goes back many years. Berchas Ananan, everyone says his own Berchas Ananan. Now we're not Yotze Berchas Ananan with one another. Maybe in another opportunity we will elaborate more on this question. So the mitzvah of Lechem Mishneh is one of the halachas which are based on man. Bnei Yisrael b'midbar, Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov, they had Lechem Mishneh, and therefore Chazal Zeichel and man were metaken the mitzvah of Lechem Mishneh, and as above mentioned, according to the Taz and Hilchos Chanukah, Lechem Mishneh is the Diuraisa. According to the Mogen Avraham and Hilchos Yom Kippurim, Lechem Mishneh is the Rabbanan, and the Posek is an Asmachta. Just coming to prove what Chazal say, Divrei Torah, Aniyim b'mokom echad, v'ashirim b'mokom achar. We would expect to find this machlokes in Hilchos Shabbos, and it is not in Hilchos Shabbos, but far away destinations. The Mogen Avraham and Hilchos Yom Kippurim, and the Taz and Hilchos Chanukah.